The Galactic Council had made their decision in the marble halls of Zentera Prime, where 1,000 alien species gathered to discuss the fate of one small blue world at the edge of the galaxy. Earth was nothing special to them, a tiny planet inhabited by creatures they called Deathworlders, who had somehow managed to crawl their way into space despite their primitive technology and violent nature. Ambassador Kethvar of the Hegemony stood before the massive circular chamber, his 4 arms gesturing dramatically as he spoke to the assembled delegates. His species, the Veltar, had controlled this sector of space for over 3,000 years, and they were not pleased with humanity's recent expansion. These humans, he hissed through his translator device, have established 17 colonies and systems that rightfully belong to more civilized species. They ignore our territorial claims, they refuse to pay the proper tributes, and, worst of all, they have the audacity to defend themselves when we attempt to collect what is owed. The chamber buzzed with agreement from hundreds of different species. The insectoid Zephyrians clicked their mandibles in approval, while the crystalline Luxarians chimed their harmonic voices in unison. Even the peaceful Aquarian delegation, who rarely supported military action, seemed to nod their massive heads in agreement. Furthermore, Kethvar continued, our intelligence reports indicate that these humans are developing weapons technology that could pose a threat to established galactic order. They must be stopped before they become too dangerous to contain. What the Galactic Council didn't know was that humanity had been listening to every word. Hidden deep within the asteroid belt of their home system, the Earth Defense Force had been intercepting alien communications for the past 50 years. They knew about the Council's surveillance, they knew about the planned invasion, and they knew exactly what the aliens thought of them. Admiral Sarah Chun stood in the command center of humanity's greatest secret, the UES Retribution, a warship that had taken 30 years to build and represented the culmination of human engineering, ingenuity, and sheer stubborn determination to survive. The ship was unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen, not because it was larger or faster than alien vessels, but because it was built with one purpose in mind: total warfare. Ma'am, called out Lieutenant Rodriguez from his communication station, we're receiving the final transmission from the council chambers. The vote is complete. She nodded grimly. She had expected this outcome, but it still sent a chill down her spine. What's the tally? 847 votes in favor of pacification measures against Earth. 12 abstentions. No votes against. The Admiral closed her eyes for a moment, thinking of her daughter back on Earth, of the billions of humans who had no idea their entire species had just been sentenced to death by creatures they had never even met. When she opened them again, her gaze was steel. Send word to all human colonies, she ordered. Execute Protocol 7. All civilians are to be evacuated to the backup worlds immediately. Military personnel are to prepare for extended deployment. Ma'am, her tactical officer, Commander Barnes, looked up from his console with confusion. Protocol 7 calls for complete abandonment of our established colonies. Are we really going to just give them up? Chun walked to the massive viewport that dominated the front of the bridge. Through it, she could see Earth hanging in the distance like a blue jewel against the darkness of space. But her mind was already focused on what lay ahead, the alien armadas that would soon be heading toward human space, confident in their superiority and their right to exterminate an entire species. No, Commander, she said quietly, we're not giving them up. We're going to make the aliens regret ever hearing the word human. The Retribution's engines came online with a deep, thrumming vibration that could be felt throughout the massive ship. This vessel was humanity's answer to alien arrogance. 2 kilometers of advanced weaponry, armor, and the most sophisticated AI ever created by human minds. But more than that, it carried something the aliens had never encountered before: the fury of a species that refused to go quietly into extinction. As the ship began to move, Chen thought about the reports from their deep space scouts. The Hegemony fleet was already assembling. Over 300 vessels, including their massive dreadnoughts that had conquered dozens of star systems. They expected to find helpless human colonies, easy targets for their overwhelming firepower. They would find something very different instead. Set course for the Kepler system, Chen commanded. It's time to introduce our new neighbors to the real meaning of human warfare. The bridge crew worked with quiet efficiency, each officer knowing that they were about to embark on a mission that would either save their species or ensure that humanity went down fighting. As the Retribution accelerated toward its first target, its advanced sensors began scanning for enemy signals. What the aliens didn't understand about humans was that they had been preparing for this war before they even knew it was coming. Every colony ship had been equipped with hidden weapons, every mining station had been built with defensive capabilities, and every human settlement had been constructed with the assumption that someday they would have to fight for their right to exist. The hegemony fleet would reach Kepler in 6 days, expecting to find a defenseless human farming colony. Instead, they would encounter the full wrath of humanity's most advanced warship, operated by a crew that had trained their entire lives for this moment. Chen smiled grimly as she watched the stars streak past. The aliens thought they knew what humans were capable of. They were about to learn just how wrong they had been. The hegemony fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Kepler system with the confidence of predators approaching helpless prey. Admiral Zexthal commanded the armada from his flagship, the Dominance, a massive vessel that had participated in the conquest of 47 star systems over the past century. Sensors detect the human colony on Kepler 442b, reported his tactical officer, a nervous Veltar junior officer named Yithmar. Population appears to be approximately 2 million individuals, mostly engaged in agricultural activities. Zexthal's mandibles clicked with satisfaction. Excellent. We shall make an example of this world that will reach the ears of every human in the galaxy. Begin planetary bombardment protocols. Leave no structure standing. But as the hegemony fleet began to move into attack formation, something unexpected appeared on their sensors. A single ship, massive beyond anything in their databases, materialized from behind Kepler's largest moon. The vessel was dark, angular, and radiated energy signatures that made their instruments scream warnings. "What is that thing?" Zexthal demanded, his 4 eyes focusing on the display screen. Before anyone could answer, the human ship opened fire. The UES Retribution's main battery consisted of weapons that human engineers had spent decades perfecting. Particle beam cannons that could punch through the strongest alien armor, missile systems that could track and destroy entire squadrons, and, most terrifyingly, kinetic bombardment weapons that fired projectiles at significant fractions of light speed. The first salvo from the Retribution struck the hegemony vanguard like the fist of an angry god. 3 alien cruisers simply ceased to exist, their molecular bonds torn apart by the sheer kinetic energy of the human weapons. The blast wave from their destruction sent nearby vessels tumbling through space like leaves in a hurricane. Impossible! Zexthal roared. No single ship could possess such firepower. Return fire immediately. The hegemony fleet responded with everything they had. Energy beams and plasma bolts filled the space between the two forces, creating a light show visible from the planet below. For a moment, it seemed as though the human ship might be overwhelmed by the sheer volume of incoming fire. Then, the aliens learned about human defensive technology. The Retribution's shields weren't like anything the galaxy had seen before. Instead of simple energy barriers, human engineers had developed a multi-layered defense system that combined electromagnetic fields, adaptive armor plating, and quantum displacement technology. Alien weapons struck the human ship and simply disappeared, their energy absorbed and redirected back at their sources. Admiral Chun watched the battle from her command chair, her face calm despite the chaos surrounding her ship. "Target their flagship," she ordered. "Let's show them what happens when you threaten humanity." The Retribution's main gun began to charge, a weapon so powerful that it required the ship's entire reactor output for a full 10 seconds. The barrel extended from the ship's prow like the fang of some cosmic predator, energy crackling along its length. Zexthal realized what was happening just seconds before the weapon fired. Evasive maneuvers. All power to engines. It was far too late. The beam that erupted from the Retribution's main gun was visible for light years in every direction. It struck the Dominance at its center and continued straight through the alien flagship, offering no more resistance than tissue paper. But the beam didn't stop there. It continued on to strike 2 more vessels behind the flagship, destroying them just as completely. The remaining hegemony ships found themselves facing an enemy they couldn't understand and couldn't defeat. Every weapon they fired was either absorbed or deflected. Every attempt to close distance was met with devastating long-range fire that destroyed ships faster than their crews could react. Commander Barnes monitored the tactical display with professional interest. Enemy fleet is breaking formation, Admiral. 17 vessels destroyed, 23 more suffering critical damage. What are the survivors doing? Chen asked. They appear to be retreating, ma'am. Chen's smile was predatory. No, they're not retreating. They're running. There's a difference. She turned to her communications officer. Open a channel to the remaining hegemony vessels. When the connection was established, Chen's voice carried across the void to reach every surviving alien on the battlefield. Her words were calm, almost conversational, but they carried a weight that made even hardened alien warriors shiver. This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force, she began. You came here today to commit genocide against my people. You came here believing we were weak, defenseless, primitive creatures who could be easily exterminated. On the bridge of one of the surviving alien cruisers, Captain Vorthke listened with growing horror as the human continued speaking. You were wrong, Chen said simply. We are not weak. We are not defenseless. And we are definitely not primitive. We are human beings, and we have spent our entire existence learning how to wage war against impossible odds. The tactical display showed the human ship moving toward the planet, but not to attack it, to position itself between the world and any remaining alien vessels. I want you to return to your masters, Chen continued. I want you to tell them exactly what happened here today. Tell them that humanity will no longer tolerate their presence in our space. Tell them that any alien vessel found in a human system will be destroyed without warning. Several of the alien ships attempted to bring their weapons online again, perhaps hoping to salvage something from this disaster. The Retribution's point defense systems activated automatically, sending streams of hypervelocity projectiles that shredded the hostile vessels in seconds. And tell them, Chun concluded, that this is just the beginning. As the surviving hegemony ships fled the system, their crews traumatized and their confidence shattered, the U.S. Retribution began deploying orbital defense platforms around Kepler 442b. The human colonists below had watched the entire battle, and now they knew that Earth had not abandoned them. But Chen's mind was already moving ahead to the next phase of the war. The aliens would not give up after a single defeat. They would return with larger fleets, more advanced weapons, and a burning desire for revenge. That was fine with her. Humanity had spent thousands of years perfecting the art of warfare, and they were just getting started. The Retribution set course for the next target system, where intelligence reports indicated a major hegemony supply depot. By the time the aliens managed to organize a proper response, half their infrastructure in this sector would be reduced to floating debris. The galaxy was about to learn what happened when you declared war on humanity. The Veltar homeworld of Hegemonia Prime had never experienced fear in its 3,000-year recorded history. Its massive cities stretched across continents. Its orbital stations controlled shipping lanes across half the galaxy, and its military might had crushed every enemy foolish enough to challenge hegemony supremacy. Today, panic gripped the planet like a virus. Supreme Chancellor Mordith Val stood in the emergency council chamber, his usually pristine ceremonial robes disheveled as he read report after report of impossible defeats. In the past week, 15 major hegemony installations had been completely destroyed, not conquered, not damaged, but utterly annihilated with no survivors left to tell what had happened. The Zirian mining complex, he read from the latest intelligence brief, reported normal operations at 0800 Standard Time. By 0830, all communications had ceased. Long-range scans show nothing but an expanding debris field where 12,000 workers and 3 orbital defense platforms used to be. General Kravithda, the hegemony's most decorated military commander, shifted uncomfortably in his chair. Supreme Chancellor, our scouts have confirmed the same pattern at every attack site. A single human vessel appears, destroys everything in the system, and vanishes before our reinforcements can arrive. One ship, Mordith Val repeated slowly. You're telling me that one human ship is destroying installations that took centuries to build. The survivors from Kepler describe a vessel unlike anything in our databases, Kravitha replied. Our weapons appear to be completely ineffective against it. while its armament can destroy our largest ships with a single shot. Across the galaxy, the UES Retribution continued its systematic campaign of destruction. Admiral Chun had divided the alien-controlled territory into sectors and was methodically working through each one, targeting infrastructure, supply lines, and military installations. But this wasn't random destruction. This was surgical warfare designed to cripple the hegemony's ability to project power. The ship dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Thanatos system, where intelligence indicated the aliens maintained their primary shipbuilding facility. The massive orbital complex could construct 50 heavy cruisers simultaneously and had been responsible for building the fleet that was originally intended to destroy Earth. Scanning the target, reported Lieutenant Rodriguez. The facility is currently constructing what appears to be a new class of superdreadnought. Estimated crew complement for the entire complex is 400,000. Chin studied the tactical display with cold calculation. The orbital shipyard was protected by 2 full battle groups, over 100 vessels ranging from escort fighters to massive battleships. It was the most heavily defended target they had encountered yet. "They're learning," she observed. "This is the first time we've seen them prepare a proper defensive formation." Commander Barnes nodded grimly. "Intelligence suggests they've been analyzing debris from our previous attacks. They may have developed new countermeasures." "Good," Chun said, surprising her crew. "I was beginning to worry this would be too easy." The human warship approached the alien defense fleet at a steady pace, its weapons powered but not yet firing. The aliens had arranged themselves in multiple defensive lines, with their heaviest ships positioned to protect the orbital facility. It was a textbook defensive formation that should have been impregnable. The Retribution opened fire at maximum range, its particle beam cannons sending invisible death across millions of kilometers of space. The alien front line exploded into fire and debris as ships simply vaporized under the incredible energy output of human weapons. But this time, the aliens were ready with a response. Massive energy spike detected. Rodriguez called out. "They're firing some kind of concentrated plasma beam." The weapon that struck the Retribution was the result of months of desperate research by hegemony scientists. By combining the reactor output of 12 heavy cruisers, they had created a plasma cannon capable of punching through any known defensive system. The beam struck the human ship's shields and was absorbed completely. Admiral Chun smiled as her tactical officer reported the complete failure of the alien superweapon. "Their mistake is thinking our defenses work like theirs do," she explained to her staff. "They're trying to overload our shields with raw power, but our quantum displacement system doesn't have a maximum capacity. It just redirects energy to where we want it to go." "Where are we redirecting it, ma'am?" Barnes asked. Chin's smile became predatory. "Right back at them." The Retribution's hull began to glow as it absorbed and redirected the alien plasma beam. Energy crackled along its armor plating, building to levels that would have destroyed any other ship in existence. Then, with devastating efficiency, the human vessel began firing the accumulated energy back at its attackers. The redirected plasma beam swept across the alien defense fleet like a sword of pure destruction. Ships that had survived the initial human assault were cut in half by their own weapon, turned against them with surgical precision. Within minutes, the entire first offensive line had been annihilated. The second line of defense opened fire immediately, launching thousands of missiles and energy torpedoes in a desperate attempt to overwhelm the human ship. The projectiles filled space like a swarm of angry insects, each one guided by advanced targeting systems and equipped with warheads capable of cracking planet-sized asteroids. The Retribution's point defense systems came online. What followed was a display of human engineering superiority that would have been beautiful if it hadn't been so utterly destructive. Thousands of small turrets emerged from hidden ports along the ship's hull, each one equipped with hypersonic projectile weapons that could track and destroy incoming threats with computer-guided precision. The alien missile swarm met a wall of defensive fire that destroyed every projectile before it could reach its target. But the human ship didn't stop there. Its point defense weapons continued tracking their targets back to their sources, sending hypervelocity rounds that punched through alien ship hulls like they were made of paper. Third defensive line is breaking formation, Barnes reported. They're attempting to close to boarding range. Shin nodded approvingly. Desperate but tactically sound. They know their weapons can't hurt us at range, so they're hoping to damage us with close-quarters combat. Orders, ma'am. Show them why that's a bad idea. The Retribution's close-range weapons were humanity's answer to alien boarding tactics. Instead of traditional guns or energy weapons, the ship was equipped with gravitic pulse generators, devices that could create localized gravity fields strong enough to crush any vessel that came too close. As the surviving alien ships approached, space itself seemed to bend around the human vessel. Alien hulls began to buckle and compress as artificial gravity fields, thousands of times stronger than planetary gravity, tore their ships apart at the molecular level. Crew members were crushed instantly as their vessels were compressed into dense metal cubes that tumbled away into space. Within 20 minutes of the engagement beginning, the entire alien defense fleet had been destroyed. 400 warships, representing decades of construction and billions of lives, had been reduced to floating debris by a single human vessel. But Chim wasn't finished. The Retribution approached the massive orbital shipyard, its weapons trained on the facility's critical systems. A communication channel opened, and the terrified voice of the station commander filled the ship's bridge. "Please," the alien begged, "we surrender. We have families, children." Chin's expression didn't change. "So to the 2 million humans you plan to murder," she replied coldly. The main gun fired once. The orbital shipyard, along with its 400,000 workers and the partially completed super dreadnought, was reduced to its component atoms in a flash of brilliant light. The explosion was visible from the planet below, a new star that burned briefly before fading into the cosmic background. As the Retribution prepared to leave the system, its sensors detected incoming faster-than-light signatures. A massive hegemony fleet was approaching, likely the largest military force the aliens had ever assembled. Chun smiled as she gave the order to jump to the next target. Let them come. She had 19 more systems to destroy before the aliens could even catch up to her, and by then, their ability to wage war would be crippled beyond repair. The galaxy was learning what humanity had always known. War wasn't about honor or glory. It was about survival, and humans were very, very good at surviving. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been called in the deepest bunkers beneath Zentera Prime, far underground where the delegates hoped they might be safe from the human warship that had spent 3 weeks methodically destroying everything the major powers held dear. Ambassador Kethvar, who had been so confident when calling for humanity's extermination, now cowered behind his protective detail as he read the casualty reports. 47 major installations destroyed, he announced with a trembling voice. Estimated losses exceed 10 million personnel across all affected species. Economic damage is incalculable. The chamber buzzed with panic conversations in a dozen alien languages. The crystalline Luxarians chimed in harmonies of distress, while the insectoid Zephyrians clicked their mandibles so rapidly it sounded like static. Even the normally stoic Aquarians released stress pheromones that clouded their section of the chamber. "How is this possible?" demanded Chancellor Vexili of the Centaurian Federation. "Our combined fleets number in the thousands. How can one ship cause this level of destruction?" General Thaindow of the Military Oversight Committee stood slowly, his massive frame casting shadows across the chamber. "Because we underestimated them," he said simply. "We thought humans were primitive because their technology appeared inferior to ours. We were wrong." He activated a holographic display that showed the battle footage recovered from the few surviving vessels that had encountered the human warship. The assembled delegates watched in horrified silence as the UES Retribution tore through their fleets like they were made of paper. "Human technology isn't inferior," Thaindow continued. "It's different. Where we focused on energy efficiency and elegant solutions, they focused on raw destructive power and battlefield effectiveness. Where we built weapons to intimidate, they built weapons to kill." The hologram showed the human ship redirecting a plasma beam back at its attackers, using their own weapons to destroy them. Several delegates made sounds of distress at the casual efficiency of the destruction. Furthermore, the general continued, "Our intelligence reports suggest this is only one ship. Humans may have built others. Silence fell over the chamber like a weight. The idea that there might be more vessels like the Retribution was too terrifying for most delegates to contemplate. Meanwhile, the subject of their terror was approaching its most ambitious target yet. The Veltar capital system of Hegemonia Prime housed not only the species' homeworld, but also the largest military installation in the galaxy, Fortress Eternal, an artificial moon-sized structure that controlled the defense of an entire sector. Admiral Chun stood on the bridge of the Retribution, studying the tactical display with professional interest. The capital system was defended by over 2,000 warships arranged in multiple defensive shells around the planet. Energy weapons platforms floated throughout the system like deadly flowers, while mobile asteroid fortresses provided additional firepower. It's an impressive setup, Commander Barnes observed. They've learned from our previous attacks and positioned their forces to prevent us from using hit-and-run tactics. Chen nodded thoughtfully. They're right about our usual approach not working here. So we'll try something different. Mom, we're going to give them exactly what they want, a straight-up fight. The Retribution approached the Hegemony defense fleet at full speed, its weapons charging and its shields at maximum power. For the first time since the war began, the human ship was outnumbered by more than 100 to 1. The aliens opened fire first, thousands of weapons unleashing their fury at the approaching human vessel. Space filled with energy beams, plasma bolts, and guided missiles, creating a wall of destruction that should have vaporized any attacker. The Retribution flew straight through it all without slowing down. Human defensive technology had evolved far beyond simple energy shields. The ship's quantum displacement system didn't just absorb incoming attacks. It stored their energy in pocket dimensions, creating an ever-growing reservoir of power that could be released at will. As the human warship penetrated the first defensive line, it began to fight back. But instead of using its own weapons, the Retribution released the accumulated energy from thousands of alien attacks in one devastating counterassault. The redirected firepower struck the alien fleet with a combined force of their own weapons multiplied exponentially. Ships that had been firing at the human vessel suddenly found themselves targeted by their own weaponry, magnified and focused with deadly precision. Entire squadrons of alien warships vanished in brilliant explosions as their own plasma cannons and particle beams were turned against them. The careful defensive formations that had taken months to perfect dissolved into chaos as ships desperately tried to avoid the apocalyptic energies they had created. Supreme Chancellor Mordith Val watched from the command center of Fortress Eternal as his fleets were systematically annihilated by their own weapons. "How are they doing this?" he demanded. "Unknown, Supreme Chancellor," replied his tactical coordinator, a young Veltar officer whose voice shook with terror. "Our weapons appear to be completely ineffective, while their ship seems to be using our own firepower against us." On the bridge of the Retribution, Chun watched with grim satisfaction as the alien defensive lines crumbled. "Target the fortress," she ordered. "Let's end this." The human ship's main gun began to charge, drawing power not just from its own reactors, but from the quantum storage cells filled with captured alien energy. The weapon that had destroyed individual ships in previous battles was now preparing to fire with the accumulated power of an entire fleet. Fortress Eternal's shields came online, energy barriers powerful enough to withstand the combined firepower of a dozen battle groups. They had been designed to be impregnable, the ultimate expression of Veltar military engineering. The Retribution's main gun fired. The beam that struck the fortress contained the redirected energy of over 2,000 alien ships, focused into a coherent stream of destruction that could have carved through a planet's core. Fortress Eternal's shields held for exactly 0.3 seconds before failing catastrophically. The artificial moon that had taken centuries to construct was cut in half like an apple. The two pieces tumbled apart, internal explosions lighting up their interiors as critical systems failed and reactors went critical. Millions of tons of advanced military hardware became cosmic debris in a matter of seconds. The remaining alien ships in the system stopped firing. Many began broadcasting surrender signals, while others simply shut down their weapons systems and waited to see what the human ship would do next. Chun opened a communication channel to the entire system. Her voice, calm and professional, reached every alien vessel and every settlement on the planet below. "This is Admiral Sarah Chun of the Earth Defense Force," she announced. "Your fortress is destroyed, your fleets are crippled, and your ability to threaten humanity has been permanently eliminated." On the surface of Hegemonia Prime, billions of Veltar citizens watched through their cities' transparent domes as their ultimate symbol of military might was reduced to glowing wreckage. However, Chun continued, "I am not here to commit genocide. Humanity fights to defend itself, not to exterminate other species. Any vessel that powers down its weapons and withdraws from this system will be allowed to leave unharmed." The offer sent shock waves through the alien fleets. In 3,000 years of Veltar expansion, no enemy had ever shown such restraint after achieving total victory. "You have 1 hour to evacuate this system," Chun concluded. "After that, any remaining military vessels will be considered hostile and destroyed." As alien ships began to retreat from their own capital system, Chun turned her attention to the planet below. Hegemonia Prime was now defenseless, its population at the mercy of the human warship that could crack their world open like an egg. Instead, the Retribution simply waited. Supreme Chancellor Mordithval found himself in the unprecedented position of surrendering on behalf of his entire species. The communication he sent to the human ship would become one of the most important documents in galactic history. "Admiral Chun," he began, his voice heavy with defeat. "The Veltar hegemony formally surrenders to humanity and recognizes Earth's right to exist and expand without interference. We beg for mercy." Chin's response was broadcast across the galaxy, reaching every species that had voted for humanity's extinction. "Mercy is earned, not given," she replied. "Your species will withdraw from all human-claimed systems, pay reparations for the damage your forces have caused, and formally recognize human sovereignty. In return, humanity will not pursue further military action against the Veltar people." The terms were harsh but fair and far more generous than the hegemony had planned to offer humanity. As the Retribution prepared to leave the system, Chun knew that word of this victory would spread throughout the galaxy. The other species that had voted for humanity's destruction would now have to decide whether they wanted to face the same fate as the mighty Veltar hegemony. The message was clear: humanity would not be destroyed, enslaved, or intimidated. Any species that chose to be humanity's enemy would face the full wrath of human ingenuity, determination, and technological superiority. The age of alien dominance was ending. The age of humanity had begun. 6 months after the fall of Hegemonia Prime, the galaxy had transformed into something unrecognizable. The galactic council chambers on Zentera Prime, once filled with the confident voices of species discussing their dominance over lesser civilizations, now echoed with whispered conversations about survival and submission. Ambassador Kethvar, the same Veltar who had called for humanity's destruction, now stood before the assembled delegates with a very different message. His once proud posture was broken, his ceremonial robes replaced with simple garments that marked his species' new status. "The Terran Federation has established colonies in 47 systems that were previously under hegemony control," he reported, his voice barely above a whisper. "They have not requested permission from this council. They have not paid tribute to established powers. They simply moved in and began building." The chamber buzzed with nervous energy. Every species present understood the implications. Humanity was no longer asking for permission to exist. They were expanding, claiming territory, and daring anyone to stop them. "What of their military presence?" asked Chancellor Vexili of the Centaurian Federation, his usual bluster replaced by careful diplomacy. Knoven, Ketvar replied. "Our scouts report the same single vessel, the one they call Retribution, continues to patrol human space. But intelligence suggests they may have constructed additional ships of similar capability." General Thaindow of the Military Oversight Committee accessed his tactical displays, showing the current disposition of alien military forces throughout the galaxy. Where once thousands of warships had patrolled established territories, now those same fleets huddled close to their homeworlds, afraid to venture into space where they might encounter human forces. "The Zephyrian Empire has withdrawn all military assets from the Outer Rim," he reported. The Luxarian crystal hegemony has ceased all expansion activities. Even the Aquarian Trade Federation has suspended long-range commerce missions. The truth was simple and terrifying. An entire galaxy had been cowed by a single human warship and the species that had built it. Meanwhile, Admiral Chun stood on the observation deck of Orbital Station Prometheus, humanity's first major construction project in what had once been alien space. The massive station served as both a military command center and a symbol of human expansion, a clear message that humanity was here to stay. Through the transparent aluminum windows, she could see the bustling activity of human colonization efforts. Transport ships arrived daily, bringing families and industrial equipment to establish permanent settlements on worlds that had been forbidden to humanity just months before. Admiral, called Captain Martinez, Chin's aide-de-camp, were receiving diplomatic communications from 17 different alien species. They all want to establish formal relations with the Terran Federation. Chin smiled grimly. Formal relations was diplomatic language for please don't destroy us too. It was remarkable how quickly the galaxy's attitude toward humanity had changed once they realized that humans could back up their words with overwhelming force. What are they offering, she asked. Martinez consulted his datapad. Trade agreements, technology exchanges, territorial concessions. The Aquarians are offering exclusive access to their fastest shipping routes. The Luxarians want to share their crystal-growing technology in exchange for protection agreements. Protection from whom? From us, ma'am. Chin turned back to the window, watching a group of human children playing in the station's recreation area. These kids would grow up in a galaxy where humanity was respected rather than dismissed, where human colonies could expand without fear of alien interference, where the name Earth carried weight in galactic politics. Schedule meetings with the trade delegations, she decided. But make it clear that any agreements will be on human terms. As Martinez left to arrange the diplomatic contacts, Chin reflected on how much had changed since that day when the Galactic Council had voted to exterminate her species. The Retribution had done more than defend human colonies. It had fundamentally altered the balance of power in the galaxy. But the victory hadn't come without cost. Reports from deep space indicated that some alien species were attempting to form coalitions against humanity, pooling their resources to develop new weapons that might be effective against human technology. Others were rumored to be fleeing toward the galactic rim, abandoning their established territories rather than risk confrontation with human forces. Admiral Chun, a new voice interrupted her thoughts. Commander Sarah Kim, the station's intelligence chief, approached with a concerned expression. We've intercepted communications suggesting that the Andromedans are mobilizing. Chin's expression grew serious. The Andromedans were an ancient species that rarely involved themselves in galactic politics, preferring to remain in their distant star systems at the galaxy's edge. If they were mobilizing, it meant they considered humanity a significant enough threat to abandon their traditional isolation. What kind of mobilization? Chin asked. Unknown, ma'am, but our long-range sensors have detected massive energy signatures from their territory. Whatever they're building, it's big enough to be visible across interstellar distances. Chin nodded thoughtfully. She had always known that humanity's rapid expansion would eventually attract the attention of the galaxy's most powerful species. The Andromedans were said to possess technology that made even the Veltar hegemony look primitive by comparison. Send word to Earth Command, she ordered. Tell them it's time to activate the Dreadnought program. Commander Kim's eyes widened. The Dreadnought program was humanity's most classified project, the construction of warships that would make the Retribution look like a patrol boat. Only a handful of people knew that construction had begun even before the first alien attack, hidden in the asteroid belts and empty systems where alien sensors couldn't detect them. All 3 ships, ma'am. All 3. If the Andromedans want to test human resolve, we'll give them a demonstration they won't forget. As the orders went out across the quantum communication network, Chun looked out at the stars and thought about the future. Humanity had spent centuries dreaming of joining a galactic community, of taking their place among the stars as equals with other intelligent species. Instead, they had been forced to conquer their way to respect. The irony wasn't lost on her. The aliens had feared humanity's violent nature, their tendency toward warfare and aggression. In trying to eliminate that threat, They had created something far worse. A species united in purpose, armed with superior technology, and absolutely convinced that the galaxy's established powers could not be trusted. 3 days later, the UES Retribution received new orders. Instead of continuing its patrol duties, the warship was instructed to return to Earth for the first time since the war began. Admiral Chun transferred her flag to the ship, curious about what Earth Command had planned. When the Retribution dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of the Sol system, Chun understood immediately. Floating in formation near Jupiter were 3 ships that dwarfed even her mighty vessel. The UES Nemesis, UES Apocalypse, and UES Ragnarok represented the next evolution in human military technology. Dreadnoughts designed not just to defend human space, but to project power across the entire galaxy. Each ship was 5 kilometers long and equipped with weapons that could sterilize entire star systems. Their quantum displacement shields could absorb the combined firepower of 1,000 ships, while their gravitational manipulation systems could tear apart planets from the inside out. Admiral Stevens, Chen's superior and commander of the entire Earth Defense Force, contacted her directly. "Sarah, it's time for the next phase. The aliens think one ship was frightening? Let's show them what happens when humanity really goes to war." Chen smiled as she studied the massive dreadnoughts through the Retribution's viewports. Each ship represented humanity's promise to the galaxy: cooperate and prosper, or resist and face extinction. "What are our orders, sir?" she asked. "Take the fleet to Andromedan space," Stevens replied. "It's time to have a conversation with the galaxy's oldest civilization. Let's see if they're more reasonable than the hegemony was." As the 4 human warships formed up and prepared to jump to faster-than-light speed, Chun knew that the galaxy was about to change again. The age of alien dominance was truly over. The age of human supremacy was about to begin. And this time, there would be no survivors to question humanity's right to rule the stars.